Hold it. I'll find a place.
Could we stop at McDonald's to use the bathroom? Matt asked. Mom does sometimes.
I'll stop at Marymore Park. It has a public bathroom. People walk their dogs around Marymore all the time. Nobody would pay attention if Denny stopped there. A loud retching sound came from the back seat.
Pookie's going to throw up,
Matt said. Denny slammed on the brakes and pulled the car onto the shoulder, but before he could get stopped, Pookie gave back the chocolate he'd eaten.
Yuck,
Matt said.
Pookie barfed all over the seat.
Denny swore. Keep the dog on the floor, he said as he pulled back onto the road and continued toward Marymore.
It stinks in here,
Matt said.
I think I'm going to be sick too.
No! Roll your window down and breathe the fresh air. Matt put the window down and stuck his face in the breeze while Denny drove into Marymore Park, ignored the parking fee sign, and stopped near a playground. 3 empty cars waited in the parking lot. Denny parked as far from them as he could. He didn't think Anita would have reported Matt missing yet, but he was taking no chances. The fewer people who saw Matt with him, the better. You go to the bathroom, Denny said. I'll clean up the mess. Matt ran up the sidewalk to the restrooms. The leash still hung from Pookie's neck. Denny lifted the dog to the ground, then led him to a large sign that gave park regulations. After making sure no one was watching, Denny wound the end of the leash around one of the wooden signposts and tied it with a double knot. Pookie sat beside the post. Denny went into the men's room, grabbed a fistful of paper towels, and held some of them under the faucet. He could hear Matt singing inside one of the stalls. Come straight to the car when you're done, he said.
Okay.
As Denny started out of the building, a trio of young women emerged from the women's restroom. Talking and laughing, they paid no attention to Denny as they walked toward their car, but he lingered next to the building until they drove away before he returned to his own car. Denny cleaned up the seat and threw the towels in a trash can. He removed the school's visitor badge from around his neck and tossed it in the trash, along with the gloves. He unbuttoned the brown shirt and discarded it, then yanked off the wig and the false mustache and stuffed them in the trash. He added the clipboard, but the empty box didn't fit. He put it back in the car. He had wondered where to get rid of his disguise. This park was perfect. A public spot, well used. Soon other people would dump their litter bags and toss their empty coffee cups and even put soiled diapers into that same trash can. When it got emptied, nobody would sort through the contents. It would all go straight into the garbage truck, and there would be no evidence that Denny Thurman had ever been here. Denny got back in the car, eager to leave. He could hardly wait to see Winston. For years, his brother-in-law had showed off his 2 boys. The last time they'd been together, Winston had suggested Denny had no children because he never stayed married long enough to father a child. You'll never have kids, Winston had said, because your wives file for divorce on the honeymoon. Furious, Denny had determined to find his own kid and prove Winston wrong. It had been easy to learn Anita had given birth to a boy. The library offered old newspaper records on microfiche, and he knew approximately when the baby would have been born. He read all the birth announcements for that month and quickly found the notice from Matthew Lee Schulter. A week after he read the birth notice, Denny moved to a bigger apartment and made plans to take the boy to live with him. He would laugh in Winston's face and claim he had known about his son all along. Denny knew Anita would never give Matt up, not even for a visit. There was no point asking her. If he did, it would tip her off that he wanted Matt, and then he'd be a prime suspect when Matt disappeared. The only way to get his son was to abduct him. Tomorrow, Denny would see his sister and brother-in-law and their boys. They lived on Bainbridge Island in a house near the beach. Winston and Celia frequently invited him to join them for a weekend, but Denny usually made up excuses not to go. The two noisy kids got on his nerves, and Winston's endless bragging about the little monsters irritated him. Even worse, Celia always tried to change Denny's lifestyle. Once she had dragged him to a doctor, and now she nagged him constantly to take the medication the doctor had prescribed. She didn't know the doctor had also recommended Denny start counseling and take an anger management class. Well, forget that. Denny didn't need some stuffed shirt with a string of medical degrees messing with his head. He'd thrown the pills away and refused to see the doctor again. This time, he looked forward to seeing his sister and her husband. This time, Matt would be with him. Celia might even be too shocked to nag. Denny started the engine. What was taking the kids so long in there? A flatbed truck with some heavy equipment on it pulled into the parking lot, and a burly man jumped down. Denny tapped his fingers on the steering wheel impatiently. He had hoped Matt would be out of the men's room before anyone else went in. The truck driver walked along the side of his rig, checking the tie-downs. Come on, Matt, Denny thought. Get out here. The truck driver jogged off down the path without looking at Denny. When he reached the sign where Pookie was tied, he gave the dog a pat and kept going. Finally, Matt came out and headed toward Denny's car. Denny opened the front door on the passenger's side. Sit up here with me, he said. It doesn't smell as strong. Matt climbed into the front seat and buckled his seatbelt. He looked at Denny and gasped. You changed your hair, he said, and you shaved off your mustache. One hand nervously fingered his earlobe. You're wearing a new shirt, too. Smart kid, very observant. You look a lot different. Do you think I look like you? Denny asked as he backed out of the parking space. No. Do you know who I am? Matt shook his head no. I'm your dad. Matt's eyes narrowed. He examined Denny for a few seconds, then asked, What's your name? Don't you know your own dad's name? I know it. My mom told me. My name's Denny Thurman. Oh. Denny could tell Matt recognized the name. You had on a wig before, didn't you? Denny didn't answer. An uneasy feeling crept over Matt as he thought about everything this man had told him. Something was wrong here, and as soon as he got home, he'd tell Mom exactly what had happened. Denny left the parking lot and headed out of Marymore Park toward Highway 520. He glanced once in the rearview mirror, but he couldn't see the dog. Goodbye, Pookie, he thought. Good riddance. Chapter 6. It had been less than 10 minutes since the school buses left, but it seemed like forever to Bonnie. Where was Matt? Who are Matt's friends? Mr. Quinn asked. Bonnie and Mrs. Jules named 4 children from Matt's class. Mr. Quinn called each of their homes. Twice, he got an answering machine and left an urgent message. The other 2 times, a woman answered, questioned her child, then reported the child hadn't seen Matt after school let out. Maybe someone gave him a ride home today, Mr. Quinn said. Perhaps a neighbor or somebody else Matt knows saw him in the bus line and offered to drop him off. Maybe he's home right now, waiting for you. Bonnie called her own number, although she knew Matt wouldn't be there. They always rode the bus home together, unless Mom made other arrangements in advance. Always. The answering machine clicked on. Matt, Bonnie said, if you are home, call the school right away. She read the number off the telephone base. Bonnie hoped her mom would get there soon. Did Matt have a problem today? Mr. Quinn asked Mrs. Jules. Did you send a note home? Mrs. Jules said, he didn't get in trouble in class. He rarely does. Matt's one of my easiest boys, except for his tendency to think about baseball too much. Something's happened to him, Bonnie thought. Maybe the anxious feeling that started in PE hadn't been because of remembering the dream. Maybe it was a premonition. Was Matt going to disappear from her life without even a chance to say goodbye, the way her dad did? Mr. Quinn turned to the school secretary, Mrs. Williams. Were there any visitors at school this afternoon? He asked. Mrs. Williams picked up the sign-in sheet and glanced at it. One parent came to take a sick child home. The regular volunteer who listens to the first graders read was here, and we had a delivery for the library. Nothing unusual, Mr. Quinn said. Nothing unusual, Mrs. Williams agreed. Matt's cheeks started to itch. He rubbed them, one hand on each side of his face. The more he rubbed, the more his cheeks itched. They felt hot, like 2 glowing coals. His chest itched too, and he stuck one hand up his t-shirt to scratch. I think you were wrong about the candy bar, he said. What do you mean? I've got hives. Denny looked at the boy. His face was puffy, especially around his eyes. I itch all over, Matt said. I need to take one of my pills. What pills? The green ones that I take every morning? Vitamin pills? No.
That's it for now, guys. I know you guys like the story. Whoever likes violence. Yeah. Bye.